Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Crazy news. The German government just told corporations to prepare for war. Let's go ahead and get started. Thanksgiving, have a lot to be grateful for. I always kind of remind everybody of this as well. You're not in a war in Ukraine. You're not in a war in the Middle East. You're not a starving child like the children that don't even have running water in Africa. So be a little grateful because we have a lot to be grateful for. Just got to put into perspective. You know, if the Wi-Fi doesn't work at Starbucks or they don't make your drink the right way, is it really the end of the world? Right? Think about it. I saw a video recently, and then I'll get to the recap stuff. They were dragging men, middle-aged men, out of their homes to inscribe them in the war between Ukraine and Russia. This was the Ukrainians. And they're obviously going to get slaughtered because, the mainstream did a pretty good job kind of pretending that Ukraine would win. But it's pretty obviously that they're completely outmatched with Russia. So just be a little bit grateful. You're not getting dragged out of your... Drug, is that the right way to say it? Dragged out of your home to go to a war where you're most certainly going to die in. All right. U.S. stocks closed on Thursday. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. The month of November for stocks was the best month for stocks in the year. All three exchanges in the United States were positive. The Communist Republic of Canada was positive as well. America, the regulators approved the first 24-hour stock exchange. So now you're going to be able to trade stocks like you do crypto or Forex, 24 hours a day. And the launch is going to be in two steps. It's going to be in the second half of next year, meaning 2025. We're in 24, right? Yeah. First stage is going to be between 4 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern time on weekdays. The second half is going to be between 8 p.m. Sunday to 7 p.m. Friday is the second stage. And they're going to have about an hour or two to work out the kinks and the bugs and do updates like they do in the futures markets. Conspiracy news, the German government has told corporations to prepare for war. And this should be in the political news, what I'm going to say now, but I'll mention it anyway because it has to do with the topic. Biden approved U.S. missiles to be shot by Ukraine into Russia, which is not bueno. So it looks like they want to, they want to burn down the world if they don't have power, essentially, right? I mean, this is just unbelievable. European markets and overseas markets are mixed. Italy was the biggest loser there. Latin America was mostly mixed as well. The Bovespa, which is the biggest market in Latin America and Brazil, went down 2.75%. Africa and the Middle East, mostly mixed as well. Here, looking at the numbers, Saudi Arabia was the biggest loser there. Very small losers, 1%, 1.5, 1.7. And Asia and Australia, the whole eastern part of the world, they were mostly mixed as well, with the TAIEX in Taiwan being the biggest loser. Bitcoin and other crypto news. Shiba's back. I love that video. So glad I can share it again. So the Shiba shitcoin on the rise again. New all-time high reached in Bitcoin, remember, was the 21st of November this week. It went up to 99,489. However, for the week, it did end up negative. It went down 2.29%. Saturday morning, it was at 96,355. And Joe Rogan on this topic was having the podcast with Mark Andreessen, if I'm not mistaken, where they talked about people getting debanked. And a lot of these people are startup founders and people with, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars that they just lost their bank account with no recourse because they're involved in things that the federal government essentially didn't want us to be involved in, like crypto, for example. A slew of other topics as well about why people are getting debanked, the people doing this, buying these things, I don't want to say it because maybe they'll ban I had a YouTube channel, 2 YouTube channels banned as well during the pandemic because obviously this conspiracy theorist wasn't believing everything they were saying. But guys, I think you now can see that most of the things that I talked about are coming true. I saw this meme on Instagram where it was like conspiracy theories that came true, check. And then the other ones, the ones that haven't come true yet, 0. Commodities and energy Coffee is about to get a whole lot more expensive. Hits the highest price since 1977. They're having a really bad drought in Brazil. I actually just watched a video that they're making a nuclear power plant much bigger to not rely so much on water, hydro for their power. Vietnam, which is the second largest producer in the world. Speak English. The second largest producer in the world of coffee also had a drought. There's two separate beans. However, I did a video about how coffee is created if you guys want me to upload it. But in the Americas, it's more the Arabica bean, like, the good stuff. And then in Vietnam, it's mostly the Robusta bean, which is used more for instant coffee. Yeah. Monday, crude oil prices fell after a ceasefire was announced between Israel and Hezbollah. For the week, crude went down 4.76%, down to $68. Brent, which is the international crude, went down 4.63% to $71.84. Gold and silver prices saw their biggest declines in a month as well in the month of November. Gold slid more than 2%. Silver slid more than 4%. This is obviously on the news that now that Trump is going to be the president in January, that he's going to change the policies that they have right now in the government, and the dollar is going to strengthen. So since the dollar, most raw materials like, crude and steel and all the stuff is all in dollars, whenever the dollar really starts to go up in price, obviously that puts a lot of down pressure on a lot of these raw materials, including things like gold and silver. They were lower this week. Year to date, silver prices are up 30%. Gold is up 28%. Gold for the week, though, was down 2.52% to $2,650 with 10 cents. Remember that it was making record highs after record highs every week. Silver's down 2.34% to $30.69. Financial and banking news, the restaurant industry is in trouble in the United States. New data is saying that the tracking of bankruptcy might be the highest in the history of the U.S. Inflation in Singapore fell to 1.4%, lowest rate since March of 2021. The Canadian dollar, the Communist Republic of Canada, Canada, well, I like to say it, hit a high of 1.4177. It hasn't been this high since April 2020, after President Trump threatened to put tariffs on Canada. He did say that he was going to put, I believe, 20 or 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada for not helping the illegal immigrant invasion. And he also announced that he's going to put a 10% tariff on all goods from China coming into the United States on top of the tariffs that we already have already. The New Zealand Central Bank expectedly they did a rate cut of 50 basis points. They're trying to help their economy out as well as other economies around the world. And Russian authorities trying to stem panic over the ruble's sharp fall. The ruble is the currency from Russia. It took an absolute nosedive, and now the Central Bank of Russia is trying to save it because they're not doing very well. It's the lowest it's been since March 2022. I went to Russia during the World Cup, the last World Cup, the one before Qatar. I believe, when was that? 2018? 2019? Something like that? Amazing country to visit. But a little bit difficult now, obviously, if you're a U.S. citizen. U.S. inflation, 2.3% year over year, in line with expectations, but above 2.1% in September. Remember that the money supply in the United States is what causes inflation. So we had, ever since Bush, everybody talks about politics and how one is bad than the other, and these people get into fights. I think it's the most ridiculous thing ever because they all do the same thing. They're all corrupt, right? It's just one side is driving the car off the cliff slower than the other. So we had 2008, 2009 crisis. That's when the big money started flowing in. That was Bush, the right. Then Obama came in, record, deficits. He's the left. Then after Obama, Trump came in. We had COVID. Obviously, that put it in high gear. And then Biden, even after COVID was finished, went even higher into gear. So the only way out of this now is to cut spending. Remember that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy want to do the DOGE department, the Department of Government Efficiency, to be able to completely slash government costs like Milei did in Argentina. I believe, if I remember right, he went down from 17 ministries down to 7, Department of Equality and Department of Nonsense. So hopefully they get it done pretty quick because Milei was able to balance the budget essentially in about a month. And then with the growth of the economy, removing regulations and restrictions and all kinds of permits, one of the things I thought that was really funny that Elon Musk shared is that he was going to have the next version of the rocket ready before they even gave him permission to fly the rocket that he was waiting to launch to move a paper across the desk. So Spain's inflation hit 2.4%, up from 1.8% the previous month. And German inflation hit 2.4% in November. In economic news, the consumer confidence moved higher in November. Expected that the stock market is going to hit record highs. We're in a situation where, because of the expectation of what Trump is going to do based on what he did in the previous administration that he had, obviously, people are a lot more confident the economy is going to start moving again. Remember that the economy in the United States is almost 70% consumer spending. So these kind of numbers are the most important when it comes to the economy in the United States. Still the largest economy in the world. Back-to-back World War champs, baby. I love that. I love that joke, by the way. U.S. consumer spending, I mentioned that one. U.S. new home sales tumbled over 70% in October after mortgage rates rose. It was 610,000. The expected was 738,000. And India's economy is forecasted to grow at 6.5% in the second fiscal year. If accurate, it's going to see the slowest growth that they've had since March 2023. India, if you don't know, I think it's the 7th or 6th largest economy in the world. It's U.S., China, Germany, Japan, and then after Japan, I think is India. And they've been the fastest growing economy in the world. And then some of the bad news for some of these corporations, Best Buy, their shares fell 5% after slashing its full year sales forecast. So it looks like consumers aren't going out and buying another version of an iPhone that they don't really need. Dell Technologies, they have a little bit of competition from Amazon too, though, in their defense. Dell Technologies shares plunged over 12% after they reported a revenue miss. And they also are expecting revenue to be lower than what the expectations were. And Tesla is seen to have a big they're going to be, at least they're seen to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of the incoming Trump administration. Had a record month. Their stocks rose almost 4% on Friday. They rallied 38% in November. They're back to being another trillion-dollar company, heading to their best month since January 2023. And in the trade news, I mentioned the tariffs that he's going to put on China and also Mexico and Canada. One of the things that was really funny is after the call with the communist president of Mexico, I forget her name, she immediately agreed to stop the inflows of the immigrants that come through Mexico to the U.S., which is ironic. Interesting facts, thanks to a footprint that was found on the shore of a lake called Turkana in Kenya, the researchers found that 2 different species of humans coexisted 1.5 million years ago, which is actually really interesting. And if you guys haven't seen the series on Netflix from Graham Hancock called Ancient Apocalypse, if I'm not mistaken, you should definitely see it. That's your news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Subscribe to the channel, and don't forget, the preppers were right.